Today I want to share with you a book called Henry David Thoreau, Year in the Woods, written and illustrated by Giovanni Manna. This is kind of a complicated book, so let's first do a picture walk. There's an introduction, and I made some notes of things that interested me. Henry David Thoreau spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days living in isolation in a tiny cabin, and he practiced living simply yet purposefully. On the preface it says, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately." And he spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days trying to figure out what that meant. He left into the woods in 1854, so he was there from 1854 to 1856. These are some of the images. He lived near Walden Pond in Massachusetts. Here's the home. I think he built himself. And I wrote the word garret. It had a tiny loft on top. Looks like his furniture's pretty simple. I see birds, things that remind me of nature. These look like crops. I wonder, was he swimming or bathing? And it looks like there's a word mullein. It's a plant that I wasn't familiar with, so I made a note of this one time when I read it. And wow, I really like that picture. It shows me just how big nature is, and looks like he's thinking. And there he is reading. A snowy day, so it's showing he went through the seasons. And I see a little bird, and this word warbling we're gonna hear, and it means singing. And there he is. As I read, let's try to figure out why he chose to live in isolation for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. Henry David Thoreau, A Year in the Woods. He actually stayed 2 years, but the author chose that title. I went into the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck all the marrow out of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. And if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meanness to the world, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. Wow, I can tell his words were written in 1854. They're not that familiar to me, and it's hard for me to understand. Let's see if as I read on I can figure out why he chose to live in isolation. I lived alone in the woods, a mile from any neighbor, in a house which I had built myself on the shore of Walden Pond. There is some of the same fitness in a man's building his own house that there is in a bird's building its own nest. So he intentionally chose to build his own house just like a bird makes its own nest. I have thus a tight shingled and plastered house, 10 feet wide by 15 long, and 8 feet post, with a garret, and a garret is a little loft, and a closet, a large window on each side, 2 trap doors, 1 door at the end, and a brick fireplace opposite. So it's quite small for a house. I had 3 chairs in my house. 1 for solitude, so that's when he was alone. 2 for friendship, when he just had 1 friend. And 3 for society. So in his house, you could just fit 3 people in the 3 chairs. My best room, however, my withdrawing room, always ready for company, on whose carpet the sun rarely fell, was the pine wood behind my house. So he's telling us his best room is nature. I found myself suddenly neighbor to the birds. Not by having imprisoned one, so he didn't catch the bird, he didn't keep it as a pet, but having caged myself near them, but by staying near them. I was not only near to some of those which commonly frequent the garden and the orchard, but to those smaller and more thrilling singers of the forest which never or rarely serenade a visitor. So he went and he sat so quietly until the birds ignored him and would sing. I did not read books the first summer. I hoed beans. Nay, I often did better than that. So he's telling us he didn't have time to do any more than just working on his garden to provide enough food for himself. Early morning was a cheerful invitation to make my life of equal simplicity, and I may say innocence with nature herself. I got up early and took a bath in the pond. That was a religious exercise and one of the best things which I did. So he took a bath in the pond. I am no more lonely than the loon in the pond. So he's saying I'm no more lonely than the bird in the pond that laughs so loud, or than Walden Pond itself. So he's saying he's no more lonely than this loon or the pond itself. I am no more lonely than a single mullein, a flower, or dandelion in a pasture, or a bean leaf, or sorrel, or a horsefly, or a bee. So he's saying living alone, he's no more lonely than any of these things from nature. Walden is a perfect forest. Mirrors set round with stones as precious to my eye as if fewer or rarer. Nothing so fair, nothing so pure, and at the same time so large as a lake perchance lies on the surface of the earth. Sky water, it needs no fence. So he's talking about how big and vast nature is, and water and the sky. I weathered some merry snowstorms and spent some cheerful winter evenings by my fireside while the snow whirled wildly without, and even the hooting of the owl was hushed. There, far from the village street, and except at very long intervals from the jingle of sleigh bells, I slid and skated, as in a vast moose yard, well trodden, overhung by oak woods and solemn pines, bent down with snow or bristling with icicles. Oh, it looks like it's spring now. Looks like it is outside in Missouri. Things are starting to green up. The first sparrow of spring, the year beginning with younger hope than ever. The faint silvery warbling, the singing, we said the warbling is the singing of a bird, heard over the partial bare and moist fields from the bluebird, the song sparrow, and the redwing, as if the last flakes of winter tinkled as they fell. So it sounds like in this year alone, he's really noticing everything. Every feeling, every thought, every tiny thing around him, he's taking notice of. For I was rich, if not in money, in sunny hours and summer days, and I spent them lavishly. So to me, I'm taking away, he spent 2 years, 2 days, 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days alone in nature to really try to determine what is important to him. When he pulled everything that could distract him away, what is important to him? And in some ways, I feel like that's what we're doing right now. If we're looking for a silver lining in social distancing, it's an opportunity really to think about what's most important to us. So right now, I'm going to take some time and create an artifact that shows what's most important to me. And I'll be back soon. Thanks. Our book made me think about the most important thing we can all do right now is stay healthy. I found a few balloons and a couple straws, and I'm going to try to do a little research and figure out how to make a model of the lungs. I've heard lots of people saying that the lungs are involved in coronavirus, but I don't know much about it. I'll be back soon. The chickens are doing really well. They're growing very quickly. At this point, you can see they still have a lot of down, which looks kind of hair-like. And until they get rid of their down and their feathers come in, which is about 6 weeks, they need to stay in a small enclosure with a heat lamp, because until they have their feathers, they can't regulate their temperature. So right now they're in a garage in a small cage under a heat lamp. They're growing very quickly. They need lots of water. You can see their water, and I'm feeding them something called a chicken starter, which is grain. But also, I'll show you right here, I save all of our, I'm not very good doing this with my hand. I gave them all of our scraps. So if you can see our vegetable scraps and fruit scraps. So this is part of cauliflower that I cut up. So I'm giving them that, and when I leave them alone, they'll eat it. They appreciate that in their diet. So we'll keep you posted, but they're under the heat lamp for a few more weeks so they can stay nice and warm. I decided to make a sign that says healthy bodies build healthy communities. In this time of social distancing, I've been thinking about what really matters, and I think it's health, and health of people and health of our neighborhoods. So I made the model of the lungs. When we breathe, oxygen goes into each lung, and then it gets in our blood and it feeds our body. So when I blow like this, the lungs fill up with air. But if these were full of water, the air couldn't go in. And that's what happens in pneumonia, which is a common symptom of coronavirus, that the lungs fill with fluid so a person can't breathe normally and oxygen can't get into their body. So this is what I created. I want you to think about what's really important to you and create an artifact to share it with us. Email it to me, or if your family says it's okay, upload it to Twitter. Looking forward to seeing it.